Even though we're missing a couple, yeah, I still want to get started. And I'm going to see how long I last it. I woke up feeling very under the weather, so I'm going to try to stick it out.
If you need, we understand. We understand.
So I think what I'm going to do is I want to hit like the most important stuff. I want to make sure we got through today and then see where I'm at. So, okay. If I drop over.
Health is important.
I'll give you my husband's phone number and you can text him. Come get her. So the topic, we're going to talk about team characteristics and diversity today. And particularly because you're working in teams, you're going to work in teams in the workplace, and you're going to lead and manage teams. So it's really important to understand, you know, the characteristics of teams, what makes successful teams, what are the components of teams. There's different types of teams. There's different processes that teams move through, actually, depending upon the type of team they are. So I want to talk about that, and there's a really great TED Talk about how to, and it kind of mimics a little bit what we're trying to do here is kind of bring people together, and it's called How to Turn Perfect Strangers into a Team. It's a really, really great video, so I do want to watch that. And then we're going to do like a little personality assessment. Don't be scared. So it doesn't ask you anything personal. It's a self-assessment. And then I want to talk a little bit about self-leadership, because we're going to start preparing for the self-leadership workshop that we're going to spend two classes dedicated to that next month. October's just around the corner. I also want to talk about, I want to kind of get your perspective on the reading that you did for today, that part one of that book. So I do want to get your feedback on what you thought of, what you think of the book so far. And then we can do a team building exercise. Erudite. So, I'm sorry, I have the wrong. That's for next week. You guys are going to do for next week. They scare you. Like, no, we're not doing it. It's not. So, okay. So, team characteristics and diversity are part of the group mechanisms in the OB model. So we're going to kind of reviewing this model. Every week we're going to take a look at it, and even though it looks linear, so like it's just moving in a straight line from left to right, where you've got the characteristics and mechanisms in red that drive individual mechanisms to ultimately affect job performance and commitment. It's actually, think of it as cyclical. It's like it's moving parts. These are all the moving parts of an organization. So all these things are constantly happening, okay? So, but the leadership and the culture is what drives it. So think of it as the engine of a car, okay? And in order for that car to run at peak performance, you have to manage those mechanisms effectively. In order, again, to have that car run at peak performance, you have to have great leadership. Really, everything hinges on great leadership. Because without great leadership, you don't have a strong culture. You won't have satisfied employees. You won't have motivated employees. You'll have employees that are stressed out. You won't have a trustworthy environment. And you won't have employees that are well developed who can perform well. So, when you think of teams exist for a purpose. You don't just form a team for the sake of forming a team. Okay. Teams are always formed for a purpose, whether it's a sports team, they have a purpose, whether it's teams like this, you are each formed for a purpose. And they're just essentially a special type of group. So when you think about the teams that you formed and the teams that you will subsequently form, what's really important to understand, and one reason I wanted you guys to do that communication plan and goal set and identify your shared values, is because you're interdependent. In order to reach that common purpose, that common goal, it's essential that leadership of a team make sure everybody understands that you are all dependent on each other, you are interdependent. So if one person on the team isn't doing their part, it impacts the rest of the team, okay? So I went up first, like, so watch this TED Talk, and then we'll get more into team components.
So it's August 5th, 2010. A massive collapse at the San Jose copper mine in northern Chile has left 33 men trapped. Half a mile, that's 2 Empire State Buildings, below some of the hardest rock in the world. They will find their way to a small refuge designed for this purpose, where they will find intense heat, filth, and about enough food for 2 men for 10 days. Above ground, it doesn't take long for the experts to figure out that there is no solution. No drilling technology in the industry is capable of getting through rock that hard and that deep fast enough to save their lives. It's not exactly clear where the refuge is. It's not even clear if the miners are alive. It's not even clear who's in charge. Yet, within 70 days, all 33 of these men will be brought to the surface alive. This remarkable story is a case study in the power of teaming. So what's teaming? Teaming is teamwork on the fly. It's coordinating and collaborating with people across boundaries of all kinds, expertise, distance, time zone, you name it, to get work done. Think of your favorite sports team, okay? Because this is different. Sports teams work together, that magic, right? Those game-saving plays. Now they win, sports teams win because they practice. But you can only practice if you have the same members over time. And so you can think of teaming. So sports teams embody the definition of a team, the formal definition. It's a stable, bounded, reasonably small group of people who are interdependent in achieving a shared outcome. You can think of teaming as a kind of pickup game in the park, in contrast to the formal, well-practiced team. Now, which one's going to win in a playoff? The answer's obvious, right? So why do I study teaming? It's because it's the way more and more of us have to work today, right? With 24/7 global, fast-paced operations, crazy shifting schedules, and ever narrower expertise, more and more of us have to work with different people all the time to get our work done. Right? We don't have the luxury of stable teams. Now, when you can have that luxury, by all means, do it. But increasingly, for a lot of the work we do today, we don't have that option. One place where this is true is hospitals. This is where I've done a lot of my research over the years. So it turns out hospitals, they have to be open 24/7. And patients, well, they're all different, right? They're all different in complicated and unique ways. So the average hospitalized patient is seen by 60 or so different caregivers throughout his stay. They come from different shifts, different specialties, different areas of expertise, and they may not even know each other's name. But they have to coordinate in order for the patient to get great care. And when they don't, the results can be tragic. Of course, in teaming, the stakes aren't always life and death, right? Consider what it takes to create an animated film, right? An award-winning animated film. I had the good fortune to go to Disney Animation and study over 900 scientists, artists, storytellers, computer scientists. They teamed up in constantly changing configurations to create amazing outcomes like Frozen, right? They just work together and never the same group twice, not knowing what's going to happen next. Now, taking care of patients in the emergency room and designing an animated film are obviously very different work. Yet underneath the differences, they have a lot in common, right? You have to get different expertise at different times. You don't have fixed roles. You don't have fixed deliverables. You're going to be doing a lot of things that have never been done before, and you can't do it in a stable team. Now, this way of working isn't easy, but as I said, it's more and more the way many of us have to work. So we have to understand it. And I would argue that it's especially needed for work that's complex and unpredictable and for solving big problems. Right? So Paul Pullman, the Unilever CEO, put this really well when he said, the issues we face today are so big and so challenging, it becomes quite clear we can't do it alone. And so there's a certain humility in knowing you have to invite people in. Right? Issues like food or water scarcity cannot be done by individuals, even by single companies, even by single sectors, right? So we're reaching out to team across in big teaming, grand scale teaming. Take the quest for smart cities, right? Maybe you've seen some of the rhetoric, right? Mixed use designs, zero net energy buildings, smart mobility, green, livable, wonderful cities. So we have the vocabulary, we have the visions, not to mention the need, we have the technology. Two mega trends, right? Urbanization, we're fast becoming a more urban planet, and climate change have been increasingly pointing to cities as a crucial target for innovation. And now around the world, in various locations, people have been teaming up to design and try to create green, livable, smart cities. It's a massive innovation challenge. To understand it better, I studied a startup, a smart city software startup, as it teamed up with a real estate developer, some civil engineers, a mayor, an architect, some builders, some tech companies. Their goal was to build a demo smart city from scratch. Okay, 5 years into the project, not a whole lot had happened. 6 years, still no ground broken. It seemed that teaming across industry boundaries was really, really hard. Okay, so I had inadvertently, I think, or we had inadvertently discovered what I call professional culture clash with this project. You know, software engineers and real estate developers think differently, really differently, right? Different values, different time frames. Time frames is a big one. And different jargon, different language. And so they don't always see eye to eye. I think this is a bigger problem than most of us realize. In fact, I think professional culture clash is a major barrier to building the future that we aspire to build. And so it becomes a problem that we have to understand, a problem that we have to figure out how to crack. So how do you make sure teaming goes well, especially big teaming? This is the question I've been trying to solve for a number of years in many different workplaces with my research. Now, to begin to get just a glimpse of the answer to this question, let's go back to Chile. In Chile, we witnessed 10 weeks of teaming by hundreds of individuals from different professions, different companies, different sectors, even different nations. And as this process unfolded, they had lots of ideas, they tried many things, they experimented, they failed, they experienced devastating daily failure, but they picked up, persevered, and went on forward. And really what we witnessed there was that they were able to be humble in the face of the very real challenge ahead, curious. All of these diverse individuals, diverse expertise especially, nationality as well, were quite curious about what each other's bring, and they were willing to take risks, to learn fast, to learn fast what might work. And ultimately, 17 days into this remarkable story, ideas came from everywhere. Right? They came from Andres Sugaret, who was a brilliant mining engineer who was appointed by the government to lead the rescue. They came from NASA. They came from Chilean Special Forces. They came from volunteers around the world. And while many of us, including myself, watched from afar, these folks made slow, painful progress through the rock. On the 17th day, they broke through the refuge. It's just a remarkable moment. And with a small, just a very small incision, they were able to find it through a bunch of experimental techniques. And then for the next 53 days, that narrow lifeline would be the path where food and medicine and communication would travel, while above ground for 53 more days, they continued the teaming to find a way to create a much larger whole and also to design a capsule. This is the capsule. And then on the 69th day, over 22 painstaking hours, they managed to pull the miners out one by one. So how did they overcome professional culture clash? I would say in a word, it's leadership, but let me be more specific. When teaming works, you can be sure that some leaders at all levels, have been crystal clear that they don't have the answers. Let's call this situational humility, right? It's appropriate humility, right? We don't know how to do it. You can be sure, as I said before, people were very curious, and this situational humility, combined with curiosity, creates a sense of psychological safety that allows you to take risks with strangers. Because let's face it, it's hard to speak up, right? It's hard to ask for help. It's hard to offer an idea that might be a stupid idea if you don't know people very well. You need psychological safety to do that. So they overcame what I like to call the basic human challenge. Right? It's hard to learn if you already know. Right? And unfortunately, we're hardwired to think we know. And so we got to remind ourselves, and we can do it, to be curious about what others bring. And that curiosity can also spawn a kind of generosity of interpretation. But there's another barrier, right? There's another barrier, and you all know it. You wouldn't be in this room if you didn't know it. And to explain it, I'm going to quote from the movie The Paper Chase. This, by the way, is what Hollywood thinks a Harvard professor is supposed to look like. You be the judge. So the professor in this famous scene, he's welcoming the new 1L class, and he says, look to your left, look to your right. One of you won't be here next year. What message did they hear, right? It's me or you. For me to succeed, you must fail. Now, I don't think too many organizations welcome newcomers that way anymore, but still, many times people arrive with that message of scarcity anyway, right? It's me or you. It's awfully hard to team if you inadvertently see others as competitors. So we have to overcome that one as well. And when we do, the results can be awesome. Right? Abraham Lincoln said once, I don't like that man very much. I must get to know him better. Right? Think about that, right? I don't like him. That means I don't know him well enough. It's extraordinary, right? So this is the mindset, I have to say, this is the mindset you need for effective teaming. So in our silos, we can get things done. But when we step back and reach out and reach across, miracles can happen. Miners can be rescued. Patients can be saved. Beautiful films can be created. To get there, I think there's no better advice than this. Look to your left, look to your right. How quickly can you find the unique talents, skills, and hopes of your neighbor, and how quickly in turn can you convey what you bring? Because for us to team up, to build the future we know we can create that none of us can do alone, that's the mindset we need. Thank you.
You know, this small idea can actually make an impact.
So I wanted to consider some of the things that she said in there, particularly, I like the term situational humility, okay? I mean, because usually, and I've experienced this and I've done this before. When I come into a team, I'm so type A, I want to take over, and I want to lead everything and set the agenda and be the one who gets things done. And it takes time to be humble and say, you know what, I don't know all the answers. And what I was doing to myself was actually limiting how much I could learn from other people. So over time, working in groups, like when we form these little sort of like ad hoc project groups, when we have faculty meetings, is doing more listening and finding out, what do you guys bring to the table, and then offering, okay, this is what I bring to the table. So taking the time to understand, what is unique about each of your team members, and that's one of the things we'll do in the personality assessment, can be very powerful. I mean, that is one way that you learn from each other. So what I want to do is just like 5-10 minutes tops. And in your project groups, what I'd like you to do is just to have a very informal conversation for you to identify, like, what are your particular strengths, and not even that, but what are something that you maybe would like to get better at, so you can kind of have an idea, what type of talents you're pooling, as we get into working in teams. And next week, I'm going to introduce we're going to talk about what our semester project is. So it's going to be particularly important to understand, what pool of talents you guys have, and you'll see it actually helps you develop some cohesion. You will actually start to learn from each other. So, and then I'm going to bring it back to a large group discussion, because I'm going to see what you guys learn from each other just from having that conversation. So let's, like I said, take 5-10 minutes to do that, okay?
All right, sounds good. So I'm going to have you go this exercise. Activity and explain to me. I don't know, I don't like if there's when I'm wrong, they go, I really don't when I'm wrong. Self-confidence, wow. Oh yeah, that's true. All right, so someone else go. That's enough about me. That's a good thing. Like, you know when to lead and you know when not to lead. Like, when there's a leader that always leads it, but you also know when to lead. Just yourself. I don't know when to turn off. Like, I don't know if they'll notice. I don't know when to turn off. No. But that's why we work good. Like, I can lead like very I might say something that I struggle very like my God, it's okay. It's really okay. But how do you feel like this? No. Don't. I love it. Okay. But not straight. I don't know what it is. She's reorganized. I was writing that. Yeah. Like, hey, we're getting real hurt tonight. I know. I'm like, that's like how my dad does this. My dad is like, I'm so carefree, so my mom's like, no, have some of your plans change. I'm like, thank you. I was videotaped this and sent it to my boyfriend.
Every agenda is something different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like my agenda's full, I don't think I have to like my daily schedule. Like I feel like I'm very organized. When it comes to
14 minutes back.
She's the exact same way, so it's like, because I'm gonna go first person.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. Okay, that was like, that's just like one.
I know, like, I kind of like, okay.
Yeah, but I think I'm on the bottom.
Oh, well, I was, going after, so was,
Right,
so
right.
Zoe was, I just, I go, yeah. You can pick it.
Alright,
Anyway,
that's
good.
So like, if you feel like, okay, this is all stressing me out, this test, this order. Like, you can do not need to just like tell me. No, take it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just no pressure.
Personal problems, it's really okay.
Oh, so I have no.
Yes, same. That's what I said. So like, wasn't just now. I got all of those, so I was like, oh, okay. I was like,
Are you creative in other ways? Like do you draw or paint?
Or would you want to like make a poster and make that?
I'm not good at that.
oh my god. It was very cute.
I showed my girlfriend 400 likes and she wants to like publish. I don't even look forward. I'm like, look, my receipts.
But yeah,
Well,
but I like the
we know. Trust me, we took 10 years.
Oh,
But no. So it was like, and it works just like.
But the thing is, like, can I see you do it?
Like you'll see me outside of my house, or like in the house. Yeah. Like Julie likes games.
Yeah, that's sweet.
And like if it's like I'm really like just like sit down, like listen to music.
I know you saw it.
I don't like being on someone's time. Like I want everyone to be like scrolling through videos, not in the cold, but like in the fall weather. Like the fall weather.
They are
Yeah, like yesterday. That's really not like no.
Okay, I'd like to bring this back to now a larger discussion then, because I would like to find out from each group what you learned about the dynamics of your team, the different things you bring to the table, and how you think that might, knowing this now, how you think that might enhance the subsequent work you guys do together. So let's start over here with Cahoots.
So we kind of shared a little bit about ourselves, so like, I'm doing it right now as we speak. I'm very type A and like, take control and do what I have to do, like, as I'm doing it, okay, so without even asking if you guys want to. Leah's more like getting her work done in her own time with like passion, like she has her own sort of like structure and things like that. And then Riley's very open to like other things. And so I think because I am very type A, they understand like that I have to stress myself out about the simplest things. And they're willing to like, like jump before onto the train and like help out.
Okay. So now, knowing that now, how do you think that will, and don't you answer. I know you answer. No,
Yeah.
just kidding. How do you think that might enhance how you work together now, from this point forward?
I mean, well, because we know each other's work styles, then we can, all try to come together and come up with a plan that works for all of us, basically.
Okay, good. So do you see how this might be helpful in the workplace?
For sure.
Okay. How about Fab Four? How about you guys?
So I like to talk, but not necessarily lead a conversation.
Okay. Just participate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Caitlin also likes to participate. She takes more of a lead in the conversation.
Okay.
She's
So you guys find your soulmate over here.
she's very organized. Something that we found that we all have in common is that we tend to procrastinate a little bit.
Okay.
So that's going to be a challenge for us going forward. Not that we procrastinate so bad that it will never get done and it won't be like a good product, but like just take our time. And a personal weakness of mine is not being able to like focus on doing one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're together, that helps me better focus. And then we should say, yeah, the list.
Okay. So do you guys find that knowing that, like, and let's take for instance, you saying that being able to focus, do you think knowing that now what kind of helps? Because I think, knowing things like that, not just knowing strengths but weaknesses, I don't say weaknesses, but less things you're less strong at, you can, I think that develops you this your perspective, and you can you become less judgmental, and being able to have that perspective, knowing that. So how do you think that knowing this now will, it will help or enhance how you work together?
Well, major drawback for me is I'm a commuter student and I commute from Illinois.
Oh, okay.
So I'm quite a ways away. So definitely we have a text message chain going, and we also have each other's emails. So, and I'm very much with my schedule. Like I try to get homework done on time. I usually am very good. This semester, I don't know why. It's just kind of catching up with me. So I have communication more, which is like texting is preferably a lot faster because my email just kind of goes unchecked for a while. And so that way it's like accountability is there right away in our
Okay.
face.
Have I talked to you guys about, have you ever used Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. free, but it's just a great video conferencing. I think it's just Zoom.com. So, yeah, definitely recommend it. So, how about you guys?
Well, we kind of like found that we're all, the one thing that we're all on the same page is like we all don't like change. We all like sticking to making a schedule, sticking to the schedule, sticking to the plan. So that's one thing that we all kind of like identified as weaknesses that we all kind of need to work on. But other than that, it's kind of like polar opposites. So we have some people in the group that really like to lead and some people that like to let others, lead. We have some people in the group that absolutely love public speaking, some other people in the group that absolutely do not like public speaking.
Let me guess which one you are.
Man, it's rough. And then like we have some people in the group that, we stated, oh, I really don't like to go first when we're presenting, and that's like good because there's the other people in the group that are like, oh man, I love the first, I want to go first. So I'm just kind of like balancing that and balancing like the person that really likes to lead, maybe taking a step back and letting the person that doesn't normally like to lead, like step up and be the leader. So we talked about all like different ranges of like, oh, well, I really like to design the, the PowerPoints and the prezzies, and I really like to, do the, speaking, and I like to do the writing. So we all kind of found like different things that we're good at. So I think it would be really good to like challenge each other because we all are so different.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, and taking a step back, and because I know like it's good to all be on the same page, but it's also good to be different because then, your strengths balance out with each other. So where one is like really strong, another person might not be, but they, are stronger somewhere else. So it's going to be really interesting and really like easy to challenge each other, I think.
Good. No, I'm glad you guys are looking at it that way, that you're going to leverage each other's differences. Because you'll find that actually produces some of the most creative problem solving is when you have a lot of diversity in your teams. So leveraging that. Okay. Yeah, bad.
So overall, we decided that we're all pretty good at communicating, and it's been pretty clear so far this semester. We have a group chat, we have emails going back and forth.
Okay.
So it will definitely help our team this semester. A couple of us mentioned that we like to have a clear plan, so we like to know who's doing what before we leave a class or before we come to the next class. We just want to know what's clear on what,
Okay.
pretty much.
Well, we also said that we've noticed things that we've done in like other group work and other classes, and we'd like to be able to like, oh, well, we noticed this in this group and how I react to this group, and maybe that's a strength or weakness, or it can bring both to this group, like just different communication styles and different things we've noticed and taking kind of the lead or the control of the group.
Okay. So you guys have a good understanding of how these things might enhance your work going forward too. Okay. So again, this all comes down to some of the things that we talked about in session 1 and 2, insofar as, and actually last week when we did that managing, or the cost of conflict. So if you think about the strategies that you discussed, like leveraging your differences, having clear focused goals and communication, and knowing these things about each other is very helpful because if you know in any situation, if you know what you're dealing with, it's easier to manage. So if you know the different strengths and weaknesses, and now I'm going to have you guys do like a little personality assessment too, can be very, very powerful, bring a lot of value to a group. Okay. Oh, I already handed out to you guys. Okay, see, I'm getting fuzzy. I already handed it. So I would like you guys to answer these questions, okay? Just put the number that matches it next to the question. But don't score it, don't tally it up yet. I'm going to show you because you're not going to do a whole score. You're actually going to, there's different questions that you're going to tally up. So just answer them and then I'll show you how to do the scoring. so then, to start to begin to score, this is the first thing you're gonna do. So all the questions that are in bold, whatever number you have there, subtract it from 6, and then that's your new number. Okay. So for instance, in question number 6, if you put a 2, your score would actually be 4. So you would subtract 2 from 6. Just for the bold one, the ones in bold. No, just for now, the questions in bold, subtract whatever score you have from 6, and then that's your new number. And then I'll show you how to do the scoring. I couldn't print this. I can't just print this morning.
For the bold one.
Yeah, just the bold one.
And subtract the 6 from it.
So like each number.
Right, every single one that's in bold.
So you have 5.
So it was 1, 6 minus 1.
Yeah. No, don't add anything up yet. Okay. Just whatever number you have up here is 6, is 1 with what you're, so actually, right, so it'll actually be 5 now, so 6 minus 1 is 5. So your score for number 6 is now going to be 5.
Oh, from the number of the question?
No, just the bold.
From the number that you put. So
Yeah.
you put a 1 here, so that's 6. Minus 1.
So what you're actually measuring in your or assessing in your personality is something called the Big 5. And they're really the 5 broad dimensions of personality. And the way to remember is the acronym CANOE. So it's conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism, openness to experience, and extroversion. So to measure your degree of conscientiousness, you'll add up 3, 8, 13, and 18. And then so on. Agreeableness, 2, 7, 12, and 17. And then once you've done that, we'll talk about what those numbers mean. And it'll be interesting to see the differences and similarities among your team's types of personalities that exist.
So we're gonna.
take care of you. Okay. So, essentially, let's just look at and this is actually a test that was developed by the American Psychological Association. Okay. And this is how they define each of these of dimensions of the big five. Okay. So conscientiousness means you're dependable, organized, reliable, ambitious, hardworking, and persevering. Okay. Then measuring agreeableness measures if you're kind, cooperative, sympathetic, helpful, courteous, warm. Neuroticism, are you nervous, moody, emotional, insecure, jealous, unstable? I know a lot of people who are neurotic, and they're mostly in my family. Openness to experience, if you ever met my sisters, yeah. Curious, imaginative, creative, complex, refined, sophisticated. And if you're extroverted, you're talkative, sociable, passionate, assertive, bold, and dominant. Okay. So if you look at your scores on the average, there's like actually a graph that we put together to kind of give you, and so actually also on page, I think it's 269 in your book. So this is the degrees to which, all right. So for conscientiousness, it's the average is right below 14. So if your score is above 14, you're a pretty conscientious person. Agreeable, 16. So if you're 16 or above, it means you're agreeable. Neurotic, 10. So if you're 10 or above, you're likely very neurotic. Do you have any neurotics in here? Oh, look at that. Oh, that whole team over there. Oh my gosh. No wonder you guys laugh and have so much fun. And then openness is about 15. So again, 15 or above is normal or above average. And extroverted, 13 or above. So, wow, we have a lot of neurotics in here. Holy cow. So, who found that they're way above average in conscientiousness? I'm just curious. Let me see how the makeup of our team. Oh, we have
I'm sorry, what?
So this is the neurotic table, and this is the conscientious table. How about agreeable? Where am I agreeable? Okay, oh, conscientious and agreeable. Okay, so there's some agreeable people on each team, okay. And then, okay, we already identified the neurotics in the room. The openness experience. How many? Okay, that's good. Oh, so just one over there? Just
Two.
Oh, okay, all right. So half neurotic table, half open, okay. How about extroverted? I knew your hand was gonna go up. How about over here? Okay, so just one extrovert, okay. Okay, so, I mean, it's interesting to see now, the different personality traits that exist on your team. How might this be helpful in the workplace if you're a manager or a leader? If you were to, because there are employers that have employees take these personality tests. And why might you do this? And I want to hear from the non-extroverts. I want to hear from a non-extrovert. Come on. Somebody who's usually quiet.
Like shows what people, like how to even your team out, on like who's stronger at what.
There you go. Exactly. That's one really good value to implement in something. Why else might you give this to an employee? Why would you want to know what their personality traits are? Let me ask one other question actually. Do you think this would be a valuable thing to do, first of all?
Yeah.
Okay. You were going to say, Michelle, go ahead.
To see like which role or which department they might fit in best with.
There you go. Absolutely. Sure. I mean, if you were looking to put somebody who you think is a good fit, would you necessarily want a whole team of non-extroverts? Nobody would talk. If you think about it. What else might you do with that in the workplace?
Well, a drawback to it is like they're different when taking the test than what you see in front of you. Like I'm very much one way and this girl plays total opposite, so we should have gotten along great. But instead her and I find out we clash a lot because we're in fact the same. And when she was taking the test, she was in a totally different frame of mind and just kind of didn't really think about the question, just like first instinct, like went with
Oh, okay.
what she felt.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Has anybody ever taken any type of personality or maybe something for in the workplace?
For work.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
actually.
Yeah? So that work, is that the place you work at right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the place you work with your mom, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
So actually, I'm a student worker in the admissions office. I'm a junior counselor.
Oh, okay.
And our boss had us take the Myers-Briggs test. So that was fun.
Now, I mean, is that something that you shared then in your department?
Yes.
Okay. Did you think it was
So
helpful?
We shared it between all the junior counselors, and it was very helpful because there was this one girl that I work with. She's very like hard-headed, but it was hard to put like reasons why or like words to it. But then we saw her personality type, and we're like, oh, that makes
This makes
complete
sense.
So now we're we're more understanding of like the way she does things, because of her personality type.
Yeah, see, it gave you a context to exercise empathy.
Right.
So to put yourself, yeah, oh, yeah, I get it now. So I mean, it completely probably changed your perspective and think how
Oh, yeah.
powerful that can be in the workplace. So putting you in context. Were you guys say something?
We did it on like a volleyball team like throughout my whole club, and it kind of like showed like kind of like who were the leaders, who were kind of like the silent leaders that led by like example instead of words, like who liked to talk more, who didn't. It was like really interesting, especially because my team was like struggling like as a group at the time, so you could kind of like see why, because everyone's like all over the place. So it's like it was really interesting because like it like showed how everyone fell in a map, like as like it was like some sort of like introvert, extroverts, and like two other like categories, and like where you fell on like this huge like circle map. It was, yeah, I don't know, it was interesting. So.
And actually, just from when we went through each of these dimensions, and as your hands went up for different ones, I sort of got the feeling, and you can tell me from also your perspective, that there's a good healthy balance on each team for the most part of different types of personalities. Did you see that? But also enough that there were also a lot of commonalities. So you shared some personality traits, but then there were some that you guys were completely different on. Do you feel that that's kind of the case on each team? Yeah? Okay. But yeah, I mean, these personality tests like this can be very helpful, because, I mean, it does give you another tool to build teams in a very thoughtful, effective way, and manage teams in a very thoughtful and effective way. Okay. Let me take like a 15-minute break. I'm not back at like 10:25. I can get some more water and take some Tylenol.
I've never had signal. I have a class from my parents saying that.
Oh yeah.
Did you get a thing?
That's why I don't get one, because then I would find another. But also for your oral health.
Yeah, I just feel like I have so many
It was not long enough.
Like, mine is like behind the scenes.
But like, my
Really? No, I had, mine was like, organizing everybody's size. And then it's like, no, not fine. Cause it was like, there was one time on the road that I was like, I'm like, non-religious for fine. Yeah, even like.
I like that, that's a smart idea.
Yeah, we talk about like how what's around it. Because I always go.
Baby giraffes.
There's a.
And I'm like, baby giraffe. Baby giraffe. Why wanted that?
I'm like, oh, okay. It's difficult, it is, you know.
Alrighty, so I think what, for the remainder of the session, I think I actually am going to end up winding up a little early today.
That's okay, we understand.
I appreciate I'm trying. I think the only thing I might have you guys do, if it's okay with you, is there was one other TED Talk I wanted you to see on leadership. It's have you watch that independently. It's like 13 minutes long. It's a really, really great TED. Rosalind Torres is a great leadership expert and speaker, and great author too. So I really want you to see her video, but if you guys wouldn't mind watching that independently.
Posted on Moodle?
Yep, absolutely. I will create a special link and session for just for that. But what the other thing I really wanted to talk about, and we've talked about, and you guys have talked in your groups about having a common goals. You identified common goals and objectives. And it's really essential for teams to know what their common goals are, again, because you're interdependent. You're interdependent, but you're also working, you know, in order to achieve something, you have to have a clear vision and purpose. Excuse me. And again, going back to identifying shared values. So goal interdependence and having that shared vision is, you know, it's really essential in, you know, in achieving a certain objective. So a lot of times what teams will do or leaders will do or suggest that there's some project teams, depending upon the type of team you are, is to actually develop a mission statement, to clearly articulate and put in writing, okay, this is our objective, this is what we want to do, and this is how we're going to do it. Again, drawing from whatever your shared values are. So a lot of times people are, you know, there's mission statements and vision statements, and they are a little different, okay? So a company will formulate a mission statement to state, okay, these are our objectives as a company. This is what we want to achieve, and based upon our values, this is how we intend to achieve it. A vision statement, however, is when a company states, okay, this is where we see ourselves in the future. So it's a statement of a future position, okay? So that's like the subtle difference between a mission statement and a vision statement. And a lot of times you'll see companies will actually combine their mission and vision statement to one, like they call it a goal statement or a purpose statement. But what I would like for you guys to do over the course of the next couple of weeks is work in your teams and develop a mission statement. So drawing from the goals and objectives that you identified. And these are just some suggested steps in mission statement development. So using the fantastic communication plans you developed is work collaboratively to come up with a mission statement. And in 2 weeks, and it's on Moodle, the date, that I'd like you to come with your mission statements to share with the class. Okay, any questions about that? Okay. Let's see. So the last thing I wanted to cover that you'll really work on and indicated is sort of an ongoing assessment, if you will. is now, you've had these discussions in your forums on competency development. So you did the self-assessment and you identified the competencies on which you wish to work collaboratively in your group. You've had those conversations in the forums. Now you're moving to the next phase where you're actually going to develop a plan. So you identified these competencies, well, how are you going to develop them? So over the course of the next few weeks, using these templates, and then there's some instructions or attached to this.
We need one more. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just being happy with five. Never mind. We got it.
Oh, okay. So the way this works, you look at the.
Yours felt really thick. I started handing her first. I'm like, oh.
Is if you take a look at how this is set up. So, and you'll do one of these for each competency. So if you need extra ones, there's a link in Moodle that you can download blank ones. Is you'll identify your competencies that you're going to develop, and then there's a box. The first column is my before description. Okay. So before I start to develop this competency, some examples of what behaviors that exhibit or show that why you need to develop this competency. Okay. And then some causes. Now when you look at some causes, that's actually that packet I gave you last week on when you turn the page from where you did the self-assessment. On the back, it'll show you there's a little heading for some possible causes of why you might be unskilled in that competency. Okay. So, and it's really important to identify, okay, what is causing me to not be skilled in this competency? And then what's your action plan? Okay, what are you going to do? Now this part, kind of leave blank for now. I really want you to just do this, because this is actually a part that's going to take place in your discussion forums. You're actually going to develop an action plan together in your forums. So you're going to collaboratively create a strategy to become more skilled in whatever competencies it was that you identified. Okay, because that's sort of a collaborative, creative problem-solving thing. Because I think in starting to read some of your discussions, some of you have the same competencies that you'd like to develop. So working collaboratively, I think will be very effective, because you'll be able to learn from each other and to develop strategies together. Okay, and that's part of developing others. Okay, which is a really very important facet of leadership, is learning how to develop others, help others develop and become stronger. And then how you see yourself after, okay? You want to sort of envision yourself after you have developed this competency, okay? What does it look like, okay? What will you be able to do then versus now? So it's just the opposite of your before description. Any questions about that? Okay, so there, oh, go ahead.
Actually, I have one question.
Yeah.
Are we just developing one competency?
Well, no, can I actually identify at least two?
Right.
Okay, yeah,
So, these should cover.
well, I know this is just one, but there is a link in the middle for extra blank ones.
Oh, okay.
So, any other questions about this? And yeah, so I will post a second discussion topic to get you going, and you'll, I think I put a due date also. You have a couple weeks to put this together. Because this requires some thought. I mean, and it requires a little bit of reflection, particularly, and which is another very key component in leadership development, is the ability to reflect on past behaviors. And you'll see this is going to make a whole lot more sense once we get into the self-leadership development, is that whole power of reflecting and adjusting your behaviors. Okay, so no question about that. Everybody's good. Okay. So, I will post that link and we'll to the other TED Talk. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to, you guys might need time to get your team thing ready, or are you good to go? Yeah, we're going to do that and then.
Like 2 minutes?
So, yeah, absolutely. And then after that, I think,
So do you want to
wind up.
sit?
Let me get those what.